Hi, this is Gary. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I tend to try to, when I talk about these things, I try to just be as honest as I can. I don't try to fluff things up, don't try to talk people into trying stuff that may or may not work. And today I'm going to be talking about the new USDA climate zones and what it means for citrus growing. And, you know, mainly 8A, B, and zone 9A. Because that's the main. Well, I also got 9B too, but with 9B you assume you can grow citrus. And one thing I'm just going to explain first off is the way the climate zones are made or come up with. They take 30 years of data, they average the low temperature of that year in, and that's added to the group. The reason this went so far north is in the 80s, late 80s, we had some really cold weather. I remember one of them, it froze all the Bermuda grass from Dallas all the way down through, I think, San Antonio. Extremely cold event. I was here when it happened. It was a big thing. Had another big winter event earlier in October in 1980s. I'm not sure when, and it was very cold. I mean, it was where normally if we had to go to the mailbox, it was about, you know, it took about 30-45 seconds to go to the mailbox, walk back. Normally with the orange jacket, go get it. Well, during that one, we actually bundled up, threw up. I mean, you dressed up when you walked outside, because if not, you got cold in a hurry. Well, we hadn't had those winters, you know, for a while. And these days were started. The new one started at 1991. So all your 80s low temperatures fell off the average, and it stopped in year 2020. So during that 30-year period of time, we had some warm weather, and we had a lot of warm winters. Did not have any of the cold blasts that we had in the 80s. But guess what? In 2021, the next year, we had Snowmageddon. Temperatures got really cold, wiped out a lot of fruit trees, a lot of the citrus trees, wiped out all of them that was up around Austin, that area. Trees that had been there for 30 years, because we hadn't had any of that really cold weather, got knocked out. We fared a little bit better. We only got down to about 13, 14 degrees. A lot of the citrus did die, but some of them survived. And then came the Christmas storm. And the Christmas storm was worse because it got really cold and we had a really low wind chill factor, which does factor in, because the longer it stays cold, what's going to happen is this bark and this tree is going to freeze. And once that bark freezes, it's going to split. And once it splits, the tree dies. So you can still have it green on your tree and it be dead, it just doesn't know it yet. So I guess this one here will show it better. What you're trying to save whenever you have a freeze, here's where the graft is on a grafted tree. From here up is your good wood. That's the wood that's going to produce the fruit that you want. And this below here almost always survive. You know, if you get the trifolia, it can go down 30 degrees below zero, I was reading. So it's going to survive, but it's not going to produce any edible fruit. So that's kind of what you're trying to protect. So if you're in, watch it, son. So if you're in zone 8A, okay, and you're going to say, well, now I can grow fruit trees. I mean, I can grow citrus trees, because that's what everybody says. Zone 8A and 9, you can grow citrus. The problem is, that's an average, okay? An average for 8A, I think, is between 10 to 15 degrees. You should have an average of that every year. And certain citrus can handle that to a point. We had some citrus that handled that one year. But it didn't handle it the other year, even though the temperatures were the same. And once you start getting in the single digits, you're done, okay? They're not going to survive unless you do some really big, you know, build a greenhouse over it, or you know, pile up. That's when you go to emergency mode, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. But you would think, okay, I can do it because that's the average temperatures. But zone 8A, I've been there. I lived up north of Abilene. We get a lot of times it gets down single digits. When I was up there, and I was up there in the 90s, some, you know, the years that it was, you know, was in that era. Don't think that it's going to keep getting warmer. I think it's going to go back the other way, because once you put those, we've had 3 years of cold, 2 years of really cold, and 1 year of cold weather. It's going to pull that north line down a little bit more. So don't think that we can be growing, citrus up in Little Rock, Arkansas, or even Dallas, Texas, or in Abilene, Texas, and you're going to be able to grow them in your front yard and have no problems. They're not going to be able to make it. And you'll see a lot of stuff. And I did get one of them. The Natural Gardener did put out a sheet. And I'm getting this from their website because I liked it best. It's a little more realistic. And it says citrus are susceptible to freeze damage and vary in terms of cold hardiness. Different varieties have different cold hardiness. They can go, some can go a lot lower than others. Your satsumas can take a lot more, can take more than your just straight mandarins, and your oranges don't have very good, and then like your lemons aren't very good. Limes have hardly any cold tolerance at all. So I'm just going to tell you, you start dropping much below 32 degrees, it's going to kill your lime, especially key lime. So you kind of got to know that too. But if you're an 8A, my personal feelings, this is the way you grow them, okay? You put them in these big pots. When it gets cold, we've made a lot of oranges, satsumas. This is the pomelo that we've had. It makes, and the way we do it, when it gets cold, those times where it dipped, below 20 degrees, these went in the garage. This isn't going to be cut off, it's got too tall. But, these went in the garage. This is only 2 or 3 years old. It's already making fruit. They'll make fruit the first year. Now, I would suggest taking the fruit off, potentially. Now, one thing that I've kind of changed on after researching, I think that you're better off to go with the Swindle or the Carrizo, Rootstock, the stuff that Saxon Becknell and Sons puts out, because it's a more vigorous rootstock, so it gets this tree bigger, and I think it helps the fruit a little bit in the first year or two. Where the trifoliate, which is the best for cold tolerance, it's going to grow a little bit slower in pots. Now, if you want it in ground, you want the trifoliate. But if you're an 8A, even trifoliate, it's not going to make it. The only hope that you would have, if you had a house that had a south-facing wall and you put it right up against that brick wall, and then when it got really cold, it drops into the teens, you start giving it, you start putting blankets on it, lights on it, whatever, to keep it warmer. You could do that, but that's what you're going to do. Don't think that you can walk out here in the middle of the yard and plant a citrus and it's going to survive an 8A. It's just not going to do it. To me, you're wasting your money. The other problem you're going to have is when those trees are small. When they're, well, they're all over there. When they're, I'll show some in a minute. But when they're small, they're not as cold hardy. But let's say you're living in 8B. Okay, you live it further north. This is where it's going to be, just north of Austin area. What would be? How would you do that? So I'm going to go up here and show you some that I got in ground and show you how I've handled that and have them survive. Okay, this is the in-ground gardening or in-ground orchard that I have for the citrus. This here's the blood orange, and this made it through 20. Made it through the Snowmageddon, made it through 22-1 Christmas freeze, 22 Christmas freeze. But what I did was I took leaves, and I think I took some pine bark shavings and put them all around here. So kind of come up around here, and I covered up to about right here. Okay, all this was sticking above it. It all died, but everything below it, it died all the way back to here. But I had just enough on it that these came up just above the graft, so I got me a new tree. Okay, same thing I did over here in this one, and it's the one that gives an X, Z-Sheen or whatever it is, and I had it a little bit higher up on this one, so I piled the leaves up this high. Everything above it died. This is grown out from the last 2 years, or last year. It did fine. This over here is Mr. Mac. I think I got a little higher on Mr. Mac. It's a Satsuma. It's a cold hardy Satsuma. They originated in Louisiana, and then I bought it in Houston Urban before. This is several years old. Well, no, this one I bought, it wasn't there. It was at 5 Star. and it comes from Brass's Nursery. And it's done really well, got really good flavor to it. And whenever we had that last one freeze, I put this here around it, fencing, set it around it, put the landscape fabric around the outside of it, came over the top of it. I filled it up as much as I could with grass clippings and leaf clippings. And I went out and mowed my yard that had the leaves on it, piled it up as high as I could, threw a blanket over it, and most of it survived, did really well. This one over here with Miho, it was the same thing. I piled leaves up over it. That low teens killed everything. This is all dead. It's been dead for a couple of years. But again, it was above the graft. So this is all still the good fruit. And what you have got to do is protect that graft when you get in those low teens. I know on here it says, Satsumas is upper to mid-teens. If it's going to get in the teens, I'm going to put stuff around it. And it may or may not kill the top of it. If you don't kill the top of it, that's fine. Don't do it right before the freeze, because like in Snowmageddon, I was going to do it the day before. I would have had a lot higher, but it started sleeting and raining and got really nasty weather. You couldn't work outside. It's not going to hurt these trees to be under that mulch for a week. It's going to be a whole lot better than what the temperature does. And once it warms up, you pull all the stuff off of it. It becomes your mulch around it. No harm, no foul. So the one that really did the best is one up over here, and I'll show you here in just a second. Okay, this is a Jiu-Jitsu Sweet Lemon, and it's very cold hardy. I mean, it probably goes even lower than, it has survived because it got big on me. And that's one thing I like about, now this is a trifoliate, but the tree itself is a very vigorous tree, and it's the oldest of the trees that I have. I brought it up from the old house that we lived in that got flooded. You can see right here is the graft union. This is trifoliate down here. This is Jiu-Jitsu up here. So this shows very distinct where it's at. What I did was where we had the freeze, I piled potting mix, everything else up here. I had the bags of pine bark mulch. I set them all up here, set them around there. Threw as much stuff as I could. I think I got all the way up to about right here. Because what I was wanting to do, if this thing did die back, I wanted to save this grass area here, so hopefully it would come out and I could save the tree. The other thing that I did for this one is I took a generator, put it on this side. This is the north side here. Put the generator over here. I had this landscape fabric that's still sitting up here to block the wind, and I put a little space heater on it, let it run all night. And we let it run 2 nights in a row, and the whole tree defoliated. The tips of it broke off. You're gonna see, even now you see some of the part that I cut that off. That was dead areas on it, dead limbs, but it survived. Produced no fruit that the next, the immediate spring, but then the year after that, it was loaded down with fruit. And then last year we got it again, so again it didn't put any fruit on. But if I didn't done anything, it might have survived. So if I was going to try to do something like in the upper parts of 9A, I'm not comfortable with 8B. I think that line's too far north. And if we get lucky and we get 10 years of mild winters, and the 2-3 previous years doesn't happen, I think this tree will do fine, even in the Austin area. But just realize, if you're going to be getting down that low teens, you want to maybe try to do something to protect that graft area. And like I say, piling up dirt, piling up whatever on it, get above that graft union and pull that stuff off when it warms back up. You're not hurting the tree a bit. You'll come through it fine. You're not going to get any diseases for just that dirt being there. You don't want to leave it all winter, but just whenever it gets cold, when it heats back up, pull it back off. So that's how I've done that. Now I want to show you about the right size that you would want. And like I say, 8B maybe. Still wouldn't do that when in 8A. And 9B, I think this is doable. I think we can grow citrus here. You just have to realize there's going to be some years you're going to have to protect it. But let me kind of show you why you don't want a very aggressive rootstock. Okay, this is an N93 navel orange. It's one of the sweetest navel oranges that there is out there. It has a, like I say, very sweet taste. It's went through all the you know, the two bad storms. But what I did, I took a T-post stuck here, a T-post there, 4 T-posts, wrapped it around with the landscape fabric a couple of times. I got a lot of it because I thought it was great, so I started using it and finding it wasn't. So I found a use for it. I took a comforter, I put it over the top, I filled it up with as much leaves and stuff as I could find. I got up to probably about this height on it. And then I took a comforter, threw over the top of that. Before I threw the comforter on, I wet it down, because you want it to be wet. You know, that cold will, that water will help insulate. You do want your soil to be wet 3 or 4 days before the coat hits. Strap that down, because we had a lot of windy weather that last one. And it came through fine. Did have a little bit of tip burn on some of it. This was done in on the Snowmageddon part of it. It's not supposed to survive anything below 28 degrees, okay? And I got it down to survive temperatures. We were around 12, 13 degrees, somewhere around in there. So you can do it, but one thing that I caution is down here, during Snowmageddon, we had two nights. One night got down to 14 degrees in Beaumont, which we're a little bit colder than them, a degree or two. We got down to 14 degrees at Beaumont, 16 degrees the next day. That Saturday, that happened on a Monday morning and a Tuesday morning. That next Saturday or Sunday morning, or Sunday, I went out and planted tomatoes, and those tomatoes survived. When we have those temperature dives down, we stay there for just a day or two and we warm right back up. I did see a person that said, hey, we had some weird weather, and I think it was in South Carolina. I don't understand that weather, but apparently he said it got down like 17 degrees and it warmed back up to like 60 something degrees that day, and got down to 17 degrees the next morning, and we got up to, he said, did that 4 times. But I'm going, but if it warmed back up into 60s and 70s the next day, then really you just had that one, you know, it's just having to survive that one night. What kills these citrus is if you get down to that, you know, 15 degrees, 16 degrees, and it stays cold all that next day, it stays below freezing, and that next night it gets down to 16 degrees, and then the day after that it stays down around 20 degrees. As you say, the longer it stays cold, the longer it stays below zero, the more likely you are to kill that that bark. And once that bark dies, once it freezes, it's going to split and it's going to kill the tree. These over here, I mean, they're just right next to each other. This was one that was the tissue. It was a mandarin. It's more winter hardy than the other one. This one survived. That one survived. This one didn't. This is the old rootstock that you're seeing here. Not, you know, it's not really good for anything. I just ain't got around to cutting it down yet. Or you could graft back to it. But that's kind of the bad part about it. I will say that if you're going to be in calcareous soils, one thing I was reading I didn't know about till I was going to do this video. I always wonder why Saxon Becknell and Sons use this rootstock rather than trifoliate. And I think the reason why, well, 2 reasons. It makes a prettier tree starting out. It's a more vigorous tree, so it gets bigger faster. And I think the other reason is it is tolerant of calcareous soils. That don't mean nothing to me. I've got this soil around here is you know, it's 5.5 or below pH, and that out there is probably 4 something. So calcareous soils don't mean anything to me, but if you're up around the Austin area, the Dallas area, you very well may want this other rootstock if you can be putting them in the ground, because they can handle the calcareous soil better. So that kind of makes a lot of sense, because, you know, I mentioned Saxon and Becknell. Saxon and Becknell uses this type of rootstock. And the Brazos Nursery is the other big nursery in Texas, and they tend to use the trifoliate. So I like the trifoliate better. It's produced a smaller tree. That smaller tree over there was on trifoliate. I can cover it easier. I can protect it easier, where the other one's going to grow fast, and then you know, it's being harder to protect the whole tree. But anyway, you go at it. All I'm saying is don't get too excited about growing citrus. Nothing's changed. It's not, I don't think this is actually even a trend. It's just that we so happen to miss the freezing on both ends of this 30-year gap, and we may not do that again. That could have just been a fluke of the, you know, weather's a weird thing. So If we weren't able to grow it in the last 30 years, I don't think we're going to be able to grow it in the next 30 years. So don't get too excited about it. Don't think, hey, I can just go out there and plant me a tree way out here in the middle of, well, we're like here. This tree didn't survive. If this tree would have been right up next to my house on the south side, it would have survived, I think. But it wasn't, so it didn't make it. So where you put it is important, the varieties you put it. Like I say, the Satsumas and the kumquats are the most cold-tolerant. If you're going to try going 8, upper parts of 9A and 8B, that would be the ones I would try. Mandarins, they're saying the mid to low 20s. And, your oranges, your blood orange and all that, usually upper 20s. And like I say, if you're growing limes, I think all of them need to be in containers. I don't care, unless you're in, zone 9B. So that's my take on it. Be careful when they start talking about averages, because if you get a 30-degree winter and you get a 15-degree winter not next to it, guess what? You're spot on with averages, but that 15-degree may kill your citrus. So don't be overly excited that, hey, now it shows it being warmer. It showed it's been warmer over the last 30 years, minus the 2 years it was really cold. So nothing's really changed from that point of view. If you're new to the area, it's kind of good to kind of get an idea, but if you've been there, don't think that suddenly things have changed, because they're still the same. It's just reflecting that of what you've seen the last 30 years. Anyway, thanks for watching.